welcome to the MMA Roadshow, episode number 155. My name is John Morgan. Cole Coffee is, he's not with me today. He's back home in Las Vegas. I am in London, England for UFC Fight Night 127, Verdum versus Volkov. And even though we don't have Cold Coffee in the house, we are rolling deep with the Junkie crew. Joining me right now, Simon Head, Chamatkar Sandhu, both on the microphone, and of course, MMAjunkie pair and Abby Subban are hanging out, doing some work in the background. Fellas, we're rolling deep. How you doing?
All good. Bit croaky, but all good.
Yeah. Let's hope this voice holds up for a little while. I've been hearing this ridiculous voice of yours on this MMA media predictions for the past couple weeks, and bro, go take some penicillin or something, man.
I need to do something. There's a doctor's referral in my future, and probably some antibiotics. But for now, got a can of cold lager.
Frosty beverages is all you need, man. That makes all the world go right.
It's medicinal.
I was about to say, having some Nando's, which can get a little chilly at times, depending on what flavour you go for on the tiers, and some Fosters, that ain't going to help the old throat.
To be fair, Fosters isn't going to help anything. It's terrible. It's because it was cheap and we could buy it in suitable quantities.
The funny thing that we've learned traveling is that in Australia they don't drink Fosters at all. It's like rude to ask for. They hate it.
I didn't know that, really.
Yeah, it's because it's like the worst possible lager you could buy.
And yet somehow it's like we think that's Australians. That's how they do it.
Well, no, they just give us their bad lager. That's what they do.
We're having some cans of Fosters, but John, you're stepping your game up a little bit today.
Well, I was gonna say, all right, I'm having a little bottle of red wine over here. I don't know why, but lately, maybe it's the maturity of me hitting 40 years old. Earlier today, by the way, tonight, Thursday night, as we sit down to record, this is my birthday. I am 40 years old, which hurts to say. But yeah, I've been drinking a little bit more wine lately, and it's funny because the first night we were here, Abby looked over and he's like, "Bro, I'm kind of proud of you, man." He's like, "You're switching off the beer, you're going to wine, like that's a healthy decision." I was like, "Yeah, but I just finished my second bottle of it." So
swings and roundabouts.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know if there's that much health when you're doing 2 bottles of it, but it is what it is. All right, listen. All right. We said it's my 40th birthday. I was going to talk about this in a second. But you know what else I realized this day? We'll go ahead and touch on it. Another anniversary that's celebrated this week that I did not realize until just a few hours ago. March 13th, 1998. Okay? 20 years and 2 days ago, UFC 16 Battle in the Bayou at Pontchartrain Event Center in New Orleans, Louisiana. It was the first live UFC I ever attended. Whoa. 20 years ago.
You know what's funny? I was just about to ask you. I was like, John, you know what? You're 40 years old now. How many of those years have been dedicated to you being an MMA fan / journalist? And
20 years ago was the first one I ever attended.
Life.
Yeah, I mean, I watched it before, but I was actually celebrating my birthday. Obviously, 20 years ago, my birthday was also March 15th. This was March 13th, and we rolled down to, they said New Orleans, Louisiana. It's not New Orleans, Louisiana. It's Kenner, Louisiana, is where this like little tiny place was, small venue. I remember I sat front row. I sat cage side, and if I remember right, I believe I paid $50 for the ticket. It might have even been less than that. It was me and a girl I was dating at the time. Front row, $50. You can't even get in the door now for $50 at these events. I sat front row. Tiny little building. It's funny. We pulled it up one time on Fight Pass before. If you actually pull it up, the very first fight, as you see Bruce Buffer come out to call the very first fight, announce the very first fight, you'll see me and the girl I was dating at the time, a 20-year-old John Morgan, couple pounds lighter. Not quite nearly as stylish, of course, but 20 years ago.
You know what's crazy? I would actually love to kind of almost hear a podcast about that entire experience. And who knows, maybe, if you want to add an extra tier to the Patreon services.
Well, it just so happens you've not seen her in 20 years, but she's here tonight.
That's fantastic. All right, well, listen, let's get into it. We're going to talk all about UFC Fight Night 127, but I feel like, and I can't believe I'm saying this, I feel like we have to start with Floyd Mayweather. We're never gonna be done with this damn guy. I thought, we got our boxing match. We're gonna get this work in. We're done. But the statement came out today, right? He tells TMZ he's training. He feels good about it. He big ups his wrestling, his kicking game. He says he's learning. He's gonna do this. It's just a matter of the UFC, putting the right financials out there. And guys, I don't know. I mean, I didn't think they were ever going to box. I remember when it first came out, I said this is never going to happen. And over the course of a year, we see how things change. But what do you guys think? I mean, is it ridiculous that we're even entertaining this, or is this damn fight going to happen?
I've learned now to not think that things aren't going to happen, because I wrote off Maymack first time round, and yet it happened.
Right.
Against all common sense, probability, and everything else, the fight happened.
Right.
And it was a massive, massive commercial success. But this is like professional suicide if you're Floyd Mayweather. He's undefeated as a professional boxer. He wants to step into the UFC, not just have his own MMA match.
Right.
Excuse me. If he was having his own MMA match, Mayweather Promotions, bring in some Chamatkar opponent, he doesn't want to do that. He wants to go to the UFC.
Right.
And therefore, they're going to have to find him an opponent.
Right.
And the fight will be ridiculed unless he gets someone of reasonable ability.
CM Punk. That's as stupid as it sounds. That's literally the only fight you can make, right?
It's also
the
a stupid
only fight you can make.
It's also a fight that should never be sanctioned. In the same way that you could argue that McGregor and Mayweather should never have been sanctioned, from a boxing perspective, you could lean on McGregor's competitive, professional martial arts / combat sport experience.
Plus youth, plus size.
Yeah. So there were certain aspects that you could lean on and say, well, he's closing the gap a little bit in a few. CM Punk has not shown yet that he's a professional combat sportsman. He stepped in. How long did that fight last? 90 seconds?
Right.
Right? Did he land a punch? No. Did he land any offense? No. And when he got taken down, did he show any grappling ability at all?
Okay,
no.
but hold on, but
I could have gone in and done exactly the same thing.
Okay, but if you're not going, so if you're
not
saying
170
that one,
though.
okay, but that's the thing too. Yeah, but if you're saying that shouldn't be sanctioned,
yeah,
then should you sanction Conor McGregor versus Floyd Mayweather in an MMA fight?
No, absolutely not.
Because that just seems to me like a public execution.
Absolutely not. The only way you can legitimately do this is have somebody who's had some martial arts training, but is still green, is still raw.
Mike Jackson?
Mike Jackson is probably a better fit.
But that doesn't get you $500 million, right? I know what you mean. Does Floyd sell like all that much just by himself? Like,
but what are we doing here?
Versus...
Are we doing professional sport, or are we doing WWE wrestling, where you're putting name versus name? And this line, which used to be a very thick line between sport entertainment and MMA, turned into a bit of a dotted line, and now it's all but eroded now, where fights are being made not for any competitive standpoint where it makes sense. It's all about maximising the return.
Right.
And I understand it.
It's about money.
I don't agree with it. I understand it, because for me, the UFC should be held to the highest possible standards. It used to be, and still is, the gold standard of the sport.
Right.
They've expanded their roster to the point that there are people coming in at the bottom level who you wouldn't previously have considered as UFC standard, but that's because the sport has grown and expanded. But you need to do this. You need to do this properly. And if Floyd Mayweather wants to fight MMA, great, but you've got to match him appropriately, because if you just sling him in with CM Punk, it will look ridiculous. If you throw him in with Conor McGregor, McGregor will borderline kill him, and it just doesn't make. I don't know. It's tricky, and if you're doing it properly, you're not looking at the bank balance, because Floyd Mayweather sells himself, and then the UFC's job, as the big promotional powerhouse that they are, is to push the other guy.
All right, Sandhu, a lot to talk about there, and I want to keep on, but let me just off the top. Is this fight gonna happen? You got to put a bet right now. It's gun to head. Is Floyd versus anybody in the UFC going to happen?
Every part of me says no, but because and only because we got Maymack and we're going into a TV year where maybe this is just dangling the carrot. Hey, we may be in business with Floyd Mayweather. Maybe this is all friends helping out friends to stay in the limelight while negotiations, behind the scenes take place. But there's a dirty part of me. There's the small pit of my stomach that is just itching and clawing away, saying, "Hey, there's a small chance that this might come to fruition." And of course, if it does, it's going to be in the UFC. It's not going to be anywhere else, right? And look, again, I just kind of go back to the Maymack example. The weeks and months leading up to that fight being announced, we were still like, there's no way this is going to happen.
Right.
And listen, in terms of sanctioning, Nevada will be all over this. They'll approve Floyd in an MMA fight because of all the revenue that they're going to bring to the state.
And you can justify it. I mean, whether you're right or not, you can justify it because you can say, well, yes, we know it's mixed martial arts. It's one of the greatest boxes of all time. It's a different combat sport, but it is combat sport. I mean, you can make a case.
Yeah. And to be honest with you, look, if it happens, then it should be somebody like a CM Punk.
I agree.
Right? You know what? But it should be CM Punk, but the opportunity for Conor McGregor to say, hey, I want another $100 million check. Let's do this damn thing again. That's what they're going to...
Connor's not going to want to sit on the side and watch Floyd and somebody else make $100 million.
Hell no. Let alone somebody that's coming in as 0-1 in MMA right now in CM Punk.
I just can't see him fight. I mean, Conor would... I mean... Look, I know that we're probably MMA homers or whatever, but I mean, literally every ounce of my body tells me that if Floyd Mayweather and Conor McGregor fought in a cage, Conor would kill him. Kill him! I mean, maybe quite literally. I just don't understand why Floyd was not... I know Floyd likes money. I know he likes money. I know he's got confidence in himself, and that's cool. And you know what? To be honest with you, if he fights somebody in the UFC, you said it, Simon. It's kind of sideshow-ish, but... I'm starting to get to that point that it's okay with me. Brock Lesnar, when he first came to the UFC, I hated it. I was like, why is this professional wrestler coming over? And he had a great track record as a collegiate wrestler, but I hated it. 10 years later, 12, I'd be okay if Brock comes back again. I mean, the eyeballs are good. The attention is good. Trust me, hey, we're not a mom and pop shop anymore. We work for a very large corporation in USA Today. They want to see page views. They want to see video views. So, from a business operator, it's okay. But for me, I just like seeing the sport of mixed martial arts talked about, even if it is a little bit of a sideshow. So I'm okay with Floyd Mayweather coming into the UFC. And I can't imagine Conor McGregor being okay watching anybody else get that paycheck. But that, to me, is just ludicrous to put that fight together. I think it's insane. That's why I kind of want to see Floyd and CM Punk.
Here's the thing, right? And the Conor and CM Punk are sort of both extremes of the spectrum. You've got Conor McGregor, who has all the skills in the book, and you've got CM Punk, who, based on what we've seen so far, doesn't have them.
Right.
Doesn't have any. Right? He's working on stuff, and hopefully we'll get to see him in a competitive fight that suits him, and maybe he will have improved. What you're looking at here is, if you're talking martial arts, this is mixed martial arts, so it's a multitude of martial arts. In martial arts terms, Floyd Mayweather is a 10th Dan black belt in boxing.
Right.
Okay? He is an elite level martial artist in one martial art.
Right.
Okay? He should be fighting against another elite level martial artist who has one martial art. Doesn't have to be the same martial art, but you put him in there with someone who's got none.
Like a Dylan Dennis coming over from a pure jiu-jitsu background or something like that.
Do you remember when Roger Gracie first started MMA?
Sure.
Roger Gracie, 10-time jiu-jitsu world champion. On the mats, he couldn't be touched.
Right.
Put some 4-ounce gloves on him and start throwing punches to his face. He's got other problems to deal with. It took him a bit of a while to transition, but he's gone on and done okay. Right? Floyd Mayweather, you put him in with anybody who claims to be a, quotation marks, striker, unless it's someone who is a predominantly kick-based striker, Mayweather's going to wipe the floor with them because it's a boxing match inside a cage.
Right.
Right? What you need to do, if you're being competitive and you're trying to put it through the prism of the UFC, it's back to UFC 1. It's martial art versus martial art. And you've got boxer, stick him in with an elite wrestler who hasn't anything else.
Somebody that's 0-0, right?
Stick him in with a taekwondo guy. Stick him in with a BJJ guy. Don't put him in with someone who thinks that they can do a bit of striking, but they're not known for any ground game, because that's not a competitive fight either. So you've got CM Punk, who has none of that. So Mayweather will light him up like a Christmas tree. You got McGregor, who has absolutely every tool in the belt,
right,
to do what he wants with Mayweather. That's also a stupid fight to make from a competitive standpoint, not from a money standpoint. So what you need to draft someone in. You need an elite jiu-jitsu practitioner or an elite wrestler. Pluck them straight. Imagine if Aaron Pico had just decided he was going to join MMA. You snap him up, elite level wrestler. He's only been he's been dabbling with a bit of MMA training for like 6 months.
Right.
That's the sort of guy you want.
That'd be interesting.
That's the sort of guy you want.
I mean, you're trying to make
sizes obviously make a difference,
right?
But
but you know what you're trying to make. I mean, you're trying to make $1 billion event, right? I mean, I still think you got to have somebody on the other side that people know. I think you need 3 things. You need Floyd Mayweather, you need the UFC, and I think you need a known opponent. I don't think he can be an unknown. And still, I can't believe we're talking about this for this. Jesus Christ, Floyd Mayweather. I think he's good. He's fantastic. I tell you what, he is fantastic at manipulating the media and using the media, man. He is brilliant.
I have your opponent. It would do more column inches across mainstream media than any MMA fight in history.
Give it.
You could do it. You could do it just about in the weight classes. Mr. Nick Newell. Nick Newell is a 155-pound fighter. Nick Newell has one arm.
That is wild. You just blew my mind.
I know,
bro.
right?
Man
you just
with
blew
one.
my mind.
This man is so good he can beat you with one arm. Come on, Floyd. Let's see how good you are.
The headlines would be crazy. Floyd Mayweather versus a one-armed man in the UFC.
There you go.
Oh my god!
Oh,
I just heard it.
My God.
Send all checks to Simon Head, care of the MMA Roadshow. Thank you very much.
We're done. Thanks for listening, everyone. You know what, man? That is so crazy. I mean, and that kills 2 birds with 1 stone, right? I mean, everybody's having this debate right now. Does Nick Newell belong in the UFC? And man, that's a whole nother debate that you could spend a ton of time on because that's such a tough position. Like, I mean, Nick Newell is really good, but man, you know, like when Justin Gaethje beat him up, that was hard to watch. You know what I mean? And suddenly a very inspiring story goes to uncomfortable levels, you know, where you're like, oh my God, what were we thinking? And I know that's, you know, people may bash me for saying that. I'm not trying to be rude. I mean, I think Nick Newell is amazing, and I think he is a legitimate fighter. I think he is a UFC-level fighter. But there's no question. I mean, in not that long of a time, we've gone to where this sport was outlawed everywhere and was nearly done with. You know, that's not that long ago. I mean, we're talking about this 20-year anniversary of me seeing my first live show. All this has happened in that 20 years where it was almost gone. And now you're saying we're going to get a guy in there that, you know, has this situation, this issue, this challenge, and what happens if it goes wrong and we're putting it on national TV. I mean, World Series of Fighting did it, and credit and kudos to them, but that was hard to watch. But damn, dude, against Floyd Mayweather.
Book it.
Sandhu,
are we crazy?
Book it.
Listen, you know what? If we live in Simon's fantasy world, then that's something that
You don't want to live there.
Right? Look, let's not talk fantasy. Let's talk reality. All right. If Floyd comes into the UFC, it's gonna be with McGregor. That's the only fight. Come on, guys.
You're right.
That's the fight that's going to make the most money. If for whatever reason Floyd fights anybody else, you're going to piss off your number 1 commodity long term in Conor McGregor, and you don't want to do that. That's his fight. That's his rematch.
Right.
He wants a slice of that pie as well. All 3 partners work together very, very well. You know, a year ago.
Course.
There's no reason why they can't work together again. I don't want to see it. Like, I'm already kind of like heartbroken that, you know, McGregor's kind of almost, you know, not competed for so long, hasn't defended a title, like, you know, just knowing what he's capable of. I want to see him fight more and fight the best in the UFC and MMA.
Right.
And just for that reason and that reason alone, I don't want to see it happen. Listen, if he comes back and fights the winner of, you know, Khabib and Tony, and, you know, declares himself without a doubt, you know, the king has returned, I'm the best at 155, and maybe even then do the Nate Diaz trilogy fight, just so we can kind of, you know, end that story arc within our world. Then after that, go ahead, do the Floyd rematch, and, you know, that's never going to go away, really. You got a couple of years to maybe do that, but please give us some first. That's what I'm asking. Give us some first.
That would be a pretty phenomenal run of 3 fights for Conor McGregor if he did that.
There is a way around it as well. If you really are that opposed to McGregor versus Mayweather in the cage, which there are a lot of very strong arguments for that being the case, you could still have them on the same card.
Yeah.
McGregor still gets the shine, he still gets the dollar bills, but you don't then have to have the fight, because you could, you know, let's say CM Punk, right, who I disagree with almost as much, right? You did Mayweather versus CM Punk, and you did McGregor versus the winner of Khabib and Tony. That would do astronomical numbers, and it would also be a really interesting line in, this is 2 people playing at martial arts, mixed martial arts, and these are 2 guys doing it properly, and do them back to back, and it would highlight to the world,
gangbusters numbers.
it would highlight to the world the difference between the people who are playing and the people who are actually doing the job.
Big time numbers for sure, but there is no combination that would do more money
than those two guys.
It's the rematch. You do the whole world tour again. You make a big production out of it. It becomes a global phenomenon, a global event. No other combination is going to work. I respect all the other potential kind of matchmaking we can do with Floyd if he was to come into the UFC. But let's be real. Let's be honest.
That's the one that does the numbers.
Exactly.
It's the one that does. All right, well, let's talk about what's really happening since we're going to talk about Rio. That is UFC Fight Night 127. Fabricio Verdum versus Alexander Volkov in the main event. Guys, want to kind of ask you, we've all had a chance to talk to these guys this week. Certainly not a fight, of course, that was big and sexy. I mean, this was a fight that was based out of need. Kind of goes back to the conversation we had with Brett Okamoto last week where, so much of scheduling is done on need, right? I mean, they wanted Michael Bisping in this event. They wanted Darren Till in this event. It didn't work out, so they had to come up with something for Fabricio Verdum versus Alexander Volkov. A good fight. I do kind of wonder for you guys, especially as English residents. I mean, this is the 10th time the UFC has come to London. Yes, this is a Fight Pass card, so you know what you're expecting coming in. But I do always feel like they've treated London as like a special market, a big market. Obviously a key city in the world. And this main event doesn't necessarily scream, big time London O2 Arena. So I was a little surprised with it, but again, I think it was one of those fights that was just made. I will say, I think it's a better fight maybe than you would think. I mean, Fabricio Verdum, the likely, the rightful favorite, I should say, and I'm certainly leaning towards him. He's got the better, well-rounded game. His submission skills obviously are great. I think he's, we were talking today, Simon. I think he's just kind of the better natural athlete. Volkov is big and strong and rangy, but kind of bizarre today. He was talking about he thought his speed would help him out a lot. I was like, I don't know that, but okay, but whatever you think. Meanwhile, Volkov, he is a big dude, man. When you stood next to him today at media day, it's like, God, I forgot how big you are. He does have an impressive career record. Of course, he's a former Bellator champion, which, Simon, you pointed out to me earlier in the week. I hadn't even really thought about it. I mean, the UFC's never even mentioned that, like on promos or whatever, and I think it's just the promotional rivalry. They don't ever want to say the B word. They'll say it in commentary, but not necessarily in promotional material. So, this could be champ versus champ, former champ versus former champ. But he has gotten better during his time in the UFC. I think he looks like he's more comfortable, Volkov, and obviously he looked good in the win over Struve. But you guys tell me what you think about this main event first. I mean, was it a little bit surprising for you that this was a London main event, and also just kind of what you think about the fight itself?
Well, I think we were in a position where the card was filling up with fights, but there was no main event. And the way that the UK market works, we're starved of these big shows. So that when the UFC come to town, those tickets go quick.
Right.
Those tickets sold out before the main event was actually booked.
That's crazy.
And that's not the first time that happened. I think it happened when Bisping fought Anderson Silva.
Right.
I think they announced
but they
that
didn't,
fight.
Yeah, they didn't know that was going to be the main event.
They announced that fight on Christmas Eve.
Right.
And I think it happened again a year later. And I think when it initially happened, I know that a lot of the fans on social media were very, very upset. They thought they were being shortchanged, and they were very disappointed, especially when you've got a BAMA show. We've got two big UK promotions, BAMA and Cage Warriors. BAMA had a big show at Wembley Arena last weekend. Cage Warriors have got their Super Saturday show next weekend.
That's crazy.
So you've got a triple header, 3 weeks on the spin.
That's wild.
BAMA, UFC, Cage Warriors. Now, you might not have the money to go to all three of these events. You've got to pick which one to go to. And you're looking at the UFC card as it's coming together. It's a lot of familiar domestic level names. None of them are in what you would call standout holy shit matchups.
Right.
They're all competitive matchups,
right,
but they're not ones that necessarily leap off the page and sort of lead you to sort of gallop down to the ticket office to buy your tickets. So what you find is the people who've bought these tickets are the hardcore UK UFC/MMA fans. As a main event, I think it's a good main event. I think Fabricio Verdum is one of these guys who, for whatever reason, I think if he was a muscle-bound monster, if he looked different, I think he'd be a much, much bigger star.
I agree.
He's got that kind of... He hasn't got that traditional strongman physique.
Doesn't look like Francis Ngannou, where you look at the guy and you go, wow!
But you look at his list of victims, he has beaten a who's who.
Oh,
I don't think you can bring me any other, with the exception of Fedor,
right.
who Fabricio beat. I don't think you can find another heavyweight on the planet who's got a better CV in terms of past opponents.
No, because his crossover, when Pride had a bunch of people, so he did UFC and Pride. He kind of went through generations. I mean, I think you forget sometimes. You start looking down his record, you're like, oh my God, this guy's literally fought everybody.
Yeah, and Volkov's a guy who's flown under the radar. He's a newbie in the UFC. If you
learning English, but not great yet. So
and yes, he's won 3 fights in the UFC. First one was a split decision. Second one was a unanimous decision. Third one was a TKO over Struve. So he's progressing. He's moving up, but he's not a marquee name. He's not a ticket seller. But I think as a matchup, he deserves the matchup.
Yeah.
But the shine isn't there. The stardust that we like to talk about isn't there. And obviously they were keen on having Bisping on the card. That didn't work out. They were keen on maybe Darren Till being on the card. That didn't work out. So they had to drop to Plan C. And if you're looking at it as a Plan C, it's not that bad. It's not that bad.
What a way to hype it up! Like, hey, guys,
enjoy the fights, guys.
This was Plan C.
What? Let's be honest. You have to call it what it is.
But you're honest. It's just funny when you lay it out. You're like, well, I mean, if you admit that it was Plan C, it's pretty good.
Yeah,
but it's true. I mean, you're right.
I think you have to take it for what it is. It's a fight card packed with domestic talent in competitive fights, with one of the greatest heavyweights in MMA history headlining a card against a rising contender.
There you go.
That is it.
Well, look, just to kind of build on.
Sandhu's not buying the hype.
I mean, look, I'm not gonna lie.
I don't know if you can call that hype, but
No. Look, I'm not gonna lie. You know what? Knowing that this was probably going to be my last UFC event in London to cover before I make the move to Toronto.
That's right.
I'm not gonna lie. I was hoping for the bells and whistles. Look, when everyone was kind of like, there's lots of outcry about Bisping can't fight. It's way too soon since the Kelvin Gastelum fight.
I am so glad they didn't shoehorn Bisping onto this card, man,
Same
because he needs to sit out for a while.
Yeah,
Yes.
and while I agree with that, and while I agree that he shouldn't have fought on this card, just knowing that at the time he was super adamant that he wanted to fight on this card,
Right.
I'm like, damn. I'm like, well, if he's that serious, I'm sure you can figure out with the UFC what opponent would make sense. And he didn't want the Vitor fight, and I thought, well, look, if Bisping's adamant and they can get him a decent fight, screw it. I guess we'll have to take it, right? Not that we necessarily want that, just because
That's a little CTE between friends.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
it was going to be Rashad. It was going to be Rashad, is what I understand. Do you think Bisping Rashad at the top of this card makes that event stronger than we've got now?
I'm not gonna lie, that's a pure selfish take from me.
You're gonna say yes.
This is my final UFC card, probably before I move to Toronto. But look, the fact that we got Bisping Day today.
Yeah.
Right? So we got a big day today where he's announced a partnership with the UFC gym brand to launch 100 gyms over 10 years. We got some cool sound bites. We got him on video. We got interviews. We got that Bisping kind of experience, so to speak.
And we're getting Till as well.
And we're getting Till tomorrow. He's one of the guest fighters here. But, that being said, I kind of would categorize this event exactly how Simon summed it up. A lot of
Plan C.
Yeah, basically Plan C. Look, there are a lot of good kind of, British, the guys from Britain who I think just need something to go to that next level. Like, I love Leon Edwards' attitude this week. And actually his whole attitude coming into this fight, it feels like he's got a chip on his shoulder. It feels like he's been disrespected by the UFC and the matchmakers by not getting a more high-profile fight with an opponent ranked a bit further up the rankings. But you know what? He's going to come in and I think he's going to do the business against Peter Sabota, and I think that could be a moment where he jumps on the mic, expresses his personality a little bit, because he's one of those quiet ones. I feel like only recently has he started to kind of really express himself a little bit more.
I
agree.
What I mean? We talked to him earlier in the week, and he basically said, I get it. Like, I can't. It's not enough just to win fights. You got to talk. You got to put on a little bit of a show. And I'm going to do that. Today at the Media Day face-offs, he got up in Sabota's face, put the fist right in his face. Sabota's pushed it away, and he moved it right back there. I mean, you're right. He's got a little chip on his shoulder. He's got an attitude. And, man, I forget how young he is, man. He's still a young cat. And when he's on, So that's a good fight. I'm excited for that. Real quick, before we talk about the rest of the card, I guess since we're talking a lot about Bisping and Till, we might as well mention Liverpool, right? I mean, all indications seem to be UFC officials won't comment. They won't confirm. But it seems like that May event that was going to be in Dublin now going to be in Liverpool. The idea, of course, will be to get Darren Till against somebody. I was told that, there is no fight for him yet. They're still trying to work on it. I was also told that he would fight his mom to be on a card that was in Liverpool. So
she's not been in the USADA pool.
So that'll happen. But and I think that'll be great. I mean, I know you guys have been high on that. The UFC just going to Liverpool, number one. Of course, striking while the iron is hot with Darren Till, man. His stock is high. Yes, it may have been higher a couple months ago, but it's still pretty damn high right now. But I want to ask you, you guys think we end up with Michael Bisping on that card too?
Well, the funny thing is I spoke to him. We all got a chance to speak to him, but in the kind of few minutes that I got with him, I basically said, look, let's get some kind of rules in place for your final fight. Where do you want it to be? And he was adamant. It has to be in the UK. It has to be in England. Whether it's Glasgow or Manchester or London, he doesn't care. And I said, hey, what about Liverpool? There's reports and rumours that might be kind of happening in a few months. He didn't bat an eyelid. And here's what I'm thinking, right? You put Till and Bisping on the card, and it's like Bisping's farewell, right? And he'll get it in an arena and a part of the country that's going to have an amazing electric crowd, and they support their own, right? And on the same card, you have the coming out party for Darren Till.
So it's that passing of the torch.
Exactly. You passing of the torch. The guy that's literally had UK MMA on his shoulders for the better part of a decade, if not more, that really has carried the heavy water in trying to get the sport recognized by the mainstream over here, obviously becoming the very first champion. No one can ever take that away from him, the very first British champion. But to pass that on now to someone like Darren Till, who I think we all believe can be that guy. He's got the fighting style, the skill, the personality. Again, from a different part of England.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where the accent comes into play.
Yeah.
And, he's someone that the UFC can invest in for another 10 years. And be that guy for this particular market, but also internationally.
That's if it does happen. It would be it's a Sunday night card. I mean, that part's already happening. If they do make this change, which we all I think is going to happen, but nobody's confirmed yet. It's an FS1 card, so it's not a pay-per-view. But I think it's an important enough event, and I think that the ties are there, right? And the other thing too, and Simon, you and I talked about it earlier, that I think would make that a great fit is that putting Bisping in the co-main. Some people can say, well, that's ridiculous. You put Bisping in the main, you put Till in the co-main. Till's the new guy. But I agree with what you're saying, Sandhu. Put Till against somebody. That's his hometown. Number one. Number two, he's the guy on the way up. Go ahead and give him that shine. But the added benefit is Bisping only has to get ready for 3 rounds.
Exactly, and you could also put him in a 205 fight if you want to. How does this sound, right? So you got Darren Till versus
CM Punk.
Darren Till versus...
That's plan C.
I'm going to be a bit of a matchmaker. Darren Till versus Wonderboy is the main event.
Love it.
Right?
Love it.
I think that is the best fight for Till.
Stylistically, my goodness, that'd be fun.
Okay, you do Michael Bisping versus Shogun Rua as a co-main at 205.
I'm okay with that.
Right? It's not something you'd necessarily pick straight up.
No.
I think.
But there's no other fights for Shogun that you're itching to have.
Right, exactly.
It's a legend of the sport.
Yep.
It's
and
a name.
Size-wise, they're comparable.
Yeah.
Right? So.
And if you're a Liverpool fan that has been watching MMA forever and you haven't been able to get out of, some people don't have the funds to travel and go watch an event. You know what I mean? So the UFC comes to town for the first time. And you get to see a legend like Shogun Rua. I mean, I know some MMA fans are spoiled. They get to see a lot of events. Like, I've seen him fight a lot, and he's not the same Shogun. But if you're a fan that hasn't seen a lot of events, and Shogun Rua comes to town, sign. I hadn't thought about that at all, but I'm okay with that.
And then you back that up with 3 signings. You sign Chris Fishgold, Cage Warriors lightweight champion, who I understand is looking to drop to featherweight. You sign Paddy Pimblett, who was the Cage Warriors featherweight champion, who has since moved up to lightweight and looked outstanding a couple of weeks ago in Cage Warriors.
Yep.
And you sign Molly McCann, who is also all 3 from Liverpool. Molly McCann is the new Cage Warriors women's flyweight champion.
Right.
The UFC needs 125-pound women.
I like it.
Right. She will go in there and trade leather with anybody. You put those 3 in the Echo Arena with Darren Till, with Michael Bisping, and you are looking at McGregor Brandao levels of hysteria in the Echo Arena.
I love it. Simon, you should work for a major publication at some point talking about mixed martial arts, man.
Yeah.
You really know what you're talking about.
Thank you very much.
You know what?
I'll give it a go.
I want to make a public service announcement right now to anyone that is listening to my voice. If and when the UFC announce this fight night card in Liverpool, of course we'll get Darren Till. Will we get Bisping? Who knows? But we were all in the building. Dublin 2014. Simon, you mentioned it. I'm telling you guys, wherever you are in the world right now, try and get your hands on tickets for that fight card. Book yourself a flight for the weekend. Get your backside to Liverpool.
It's going to be a good one.
It'll be one of the best experiences of your life. And I know for a fact, I put a hand on my heart, it will be the closest thing anyone will get to experience from that night in Dublin.
That Dublin-esque.
I'm telling you,
that was
and those
special.
nights are honestly once in a lifetime, few and far between
True.
these days. It's going to be such an amazing experience that you're going to kick yourself if you're watching it on FS1 or wherever you're watching it in the world.
And if they did what Simon said, bring in, those Liverpudlians? Liverpudlians. That would be pretty amazing. All right, let's talk about UFC Fight Night 127. Jan Blachowicz versus Jimi Manuwa in the rematch in the co-main event. All right. It's plan C, right? I mean, this is another fight that nobody... I mean, I don't think anybody... No disrespect to either guys, because Jan, who was stumbling for quite a bit, now looks pretty damn good. He's had a couple wins in a row. He says, listen, I went back to my original trainers. I've kind of changed my approach to everything. We had a fantastic interview with him today that you won't hear from because Abu Saban turned the camera off instead of hitting record. And thankfully he has the earphones in right now, so he's not hearing me throw him under the bus.
He can hear you.
Okay, cool. All right, so we won't get to hear that, but he says, listen, I'm excited about this rematch. Of course, anytime you lose the first time around, you want to fight that guy again, so I'm happy about this. And Jimi Manuwa, we spoke to Jimi Manuwa. He's in an interesting position too, and obviously I think a lot of that just has to do because 205 is it's just a weird division, with everything that's going on with John, and now Daniel Cormier is moving up to fight heavyweight, so it allows you to make moves, and you haven't had a lot of fresh blood come in. So even though Manuwa came off that loss to Volkan Ozdemir had his shot, he's gone, so he's out of the way now. You know what I mean? So if you come in here and Manuwa looks strong. He told us that he says, listen, I win this. I'm not saying I deserve a championship fight, but I bet I could get a number one contender fight after that if I win this. So, I mean, there are some stakes here, and it could be exciting because both these dudes can hit very, very hard. But it is a plan C fight, right? I mean, I think Manuwa basically said I took this fight because there's nothing else available, and I don't want to sit around. And Jan, I mean, I don't know that he's necessarily earned the rematch, but of course he said, well, hell yeah, sign me up. Like, I want to get that one back. So, I don't know. For this one, guys, what do you think? Because there's some stakes here. It means something to a degree, but it's also, even though it's some recognizable names, it was kind of a weird rematch, right? When rematches come together that you weren't saying, like, boy, we sure need to see that one again, it's always kind of weird, right?
Yeah, it is. It's funny, when I was speaking to Jan earlier on today, he kind of echoed what you just said. So, and I kind of followed up on that, and I'm like, well, look.
Did you record it?
I actually did stream it on the MMA India YouTube channel.
I'm going to get slapped in a minute.
But what was interesting was he said that when he signed with the UFC, he thought that, hey, I need to look elsewhere. I need to up my game. I need a better gym facility, a better camp, a better coach. And so he made all these drastic changes. Like he finally got to the big dance, and then he changed it all up, which is such a strange thing because typically and usually
do with what got you there, right?
Exactly, and the famous example of that is, of course, Conor McGregor, right? But what he said was, you know what? He messed up. He lost a few fights, and he went back to his old school gym and camp and coach, and all of a sudden he's getting wins again, right? So if we're perhaps thinking that he's going to come in, in maybe a all for brawl kind of like decision, I think he's going to come in swinging, trying to finish this one, and Jimmy's in the same situation. He's coming off a loss to Ozdemir, and he's not happy about that. He's got a chip on his shoulder, and you're right, he couldn't miss this card. This is London. This is his backyard. Yep. It's like in that kind of way, it almost forces his hand, like he can't sit around. It's London. Yep. You know what I mean? I mean, there were talks at one stage of him potentially main eventing this event, or this card, sorry, because we weren't sure what kind of main event we were going to get.
Right.
So they were like, oh, we'll make Blachowicz and Manuwa a 5-rounder. So, you know what? I think it'll be an interesting fight. I don't think it's going to go to the distance. I've just got a good... And you know what? What more can you ask for? Two light heavyweights that are going to just, try and knock your head off.
Yep. And
you're right. What's interesting about light heavyweight right now is if Jimmy does win, then it's him, Ilir Latifi, and Alexander Gustafsson, who are pretty much all in the mix, and they're all teammates.
That's crazy.
Like, and then you don't know if Daniel Cormier is ever going to come back down if he was to beat Stipe Miocic this summer. So there's so many question marks hanging all over.
I was told Latifi and Manuwa would fight. I was told they would fight.
Really?
I was told they would fight.
Interesting. Because when I asked him that today...
He said no?
He didn't say no. He was just like, no comment. All I'm going to say is we're, in the top 5 of the best light heavyweights in the world. It's a beautiful thing.
Nice.
And I'm like, fair play to you, mate.
That was his way of saying I'd beat his ass. All right, well, listen, we did have a chance to say, and I guess I should tell the story about Abby Saban. What happened today was pretty funny. Of course, Abby Saban, our European videographer, of course, he and I together interviewed Alexander Volkov, and then we went from Alexander Volkov to go interview Jan Blachowicz, and he left the camera running in between interviews and didn't recognize it. So then we set up in the next part, and he was like, all right, you ready? He even counted me down. He's very kind. Cole Coffey never counts me down into my interviews. It's very nice. It's a nice touch. But he goes 3, 2, 1. And it's funny because I have the footage. We're actually putting it in a piece, a little summary of the day. But he goes 3, 2, 1, and then he hits the button to record. But since it's already running, he turns it off, so that the footage just cuts off right there. So it's pretty phenomenal. All right, but we did talk to Jimi Manuwa earlier in the week. We had him for a sit down. I'm not gonna lie, I was a little bit worried. I always do a couple interviews. You guys know we come in early at MMAjunkie. We try to get as much content as possible. I was looking up the list of names, and I was like, man, Manuwa, he's right there. I want to talk to him. This is a meaningful fight. But I know sometimes he's not really great in interviews. But man, he was awesome, and I know it was funny because we saw today before media day that he tweeted out like, "Oh my God, why do I have to do media on the day when I'm cutting weight? I'm in a bad mood." But we got him one day earlier, and I will say he was eyeballing people's food. He was pretty intrigued by it all, but he was in a good mood, and I thought he gave us a pretty fun interview. So I'll let everybody hear from Jimi Manuwa.
Back in London once again, fighting here. How good does it feel? I mean, is it automatic when the UFC's in London, you're going to be there?
100%, every time. I love fighting in the UK, and I look forward to putting on a great show.
Very cool. Last time we saw you, of course, disappointing night for you, the loss to Volkan Ozdemir. Talk to me about that. I mean, are there any lessons you can take out of that, or is that just one of those, you get caught in MMA sometimes?
Exactly, you get caught, and us being big guys and everything, I expect the fight to go either one way, either kill or be killed, and I've killed a lot, not killed, but I've knocked out a lot of people in my career, and taking one, it is what it is, and I can also give it as well as take it. So I took one for the team, took one for the love of the sport and that, and I'm back again to give one.
Pretty good way to look at it. I mean, were you able to look at it that way that night, the next day, or
no,
did it take a while?
Not for about a month, and I was down in the dumps, and if I couldn't believe, I remember going back to the change room and thinking, fuck, what have I done? What's just happened? You know what I mean? And it was a bit of pill to swallow and that, but I had good people around me and everything, and I snapped out of it pretty quick.
It's interesting. So you take one for the team. Fans love knockouts.
For the love of the sport.
I was going to say.
For the love of the sport.
Yeah, I mean, are you okay with that? I mean, knowing that
it is what it is. It is what it is. There's been a lot of people who's been on the receiving end of my power and taking losses due to me. So but it is what it is, man.
Very cool. All right. So then you get this matchup, kind of a rematch that I don't think anybody was really expecting. What did you think when they came with this fight? Did you understand the matchmaking? What did you think?
Do you know what? It was a fight where I almost felt I had to take it because the people I called out for said no, and everyone else was fighting, and I needed to stay active. So it was kind of. And for me, I've never turned down a fight in my life. For me, it was just about staying active and everything. Not taking anything away from Blachowicz, but he's ranked number 12 or something like that, and I'm ranked number 4. So to me, it doesn't really make sense. But then again, a fight's a fight, and I've taken him very seriously.
Was it tough at all to find motivation? I mean, here's a guy that you already beat. You didn't finish him. Do you want to improve him? How was it getting ready for him?
I'm motivated by the fear of losing, because I'm going against another man who's trained weeks and weeks to beat me and everything. So that's all the motivation I need, the fear of losing.
Nice. We've talked to you in the past about some boxing aspirations. Are those still something that's in your plans? Have you checked in on that at all?
Yeah, that's kind of died down now, but it's still in the back of my mind because he's fighting. David Haye's now fighting the rematch with Tony Bellew, so we'll see how that goes, and that's still in my plans as well, because I believe that'll be a mega fight for London at the O2 as well.
Yeah. Well, we hear about Zuffa boxing, right? I mean, so who knows?
Exactly. Zuffa's bringing out boxing, so you know, it's a possibility.
Very cool. Well, we know the focus is on MMA right now. You mentioned the ranking. Give me an idea. I mean, coming off a loss, obviously disappointing, but you know, the title shot was there for him. Now, you know, he's cleared out of the way, I guess. So, what do you think? I mean, what is the goal for you right now? Is it to get a title shot? Do you think there's a path to you right now?
The path to me right now is a bit vague because, but it could play out well because DC's gone up to heavyweight. Alex has got no one to fight. Volkan and Glover are fighting in May, so I think after this fight, me winning this fight, not looking past this fight, but after this fight I expect to win, and I expect to get the winner of the Glover and Ozdemir, and then win that fight, then I'll fight for the title. So you know, I'll take it. For me, the title's still in my sights and everything, but I'm taking one fight at a time now.
Very nice. So what's the key then? I mean, knowing that you want that title shot, you don't want to lose focus here. Is it to go in and make a statement? I mean, do you feel like you got to go in and leave no question put on the show?
I will be making a statement on Saturday. I will be making a statement. And I think I've got a lot of anger coming into this fight from the last fight, and I feel that he's going to get the brunt of it.
That was Jimi Manuwa in the co-main event of UFC Fight Night 127. Hey, listen, I should say, if you like what you're hearing, do us a favor. Make sure you subscribe. Log into iTunes. Make sure you subscribe. Rate us. Review us. Take some time. Leave a little feedback. We always like that stuff. Like reading about it. Like hearing what you think. Or, if you want to take it to the next level, you step your game up. You go to Patreon.com. We just started. We launched that recently. It's Patreon.com/The MMA Roadshow, where you can help us out, support the show financially. We really would appreciate that. You know, it's not free. We do this for fun because we love it. As you guys know, you've been involved in the podcasting game yourselves as well. It's not free. The equipment costs money, of course. Hosting stuff on all the different platforms costs money. And there's some things that we want to do as well. Here we are sitting here in this fine Airbnb establishment, drinking some frosty beverages and some red wine because I'm classy like that. We want to do some live streaming opportunities. We want to be able to kind of interact with fans, but all that stuff costs money. And I know we have a couple fine sponsors to the show, but we could use a little extra help, is what I'm trying to say. So we're turning to that, and we'd appreciate anybody that does it. We're still going to keep this content free. I've talked to Sandhu about some suggestions. I've talked to some other people about some. I'm hesitant to put stuff completely behind the paywall because I get it. Not everybody can throw down a couple bucks. I totally get that. But if you can, we appreciate it. I want to try to keep the content free, but we'll see. That's my plan for now. But I don't know. I'm just making this shit up as I go pretty much the whole time. But I do want to see. Yeah, you can totally see that. I do want to give a big shout out. We just got started last week. It was kind of we'd been talking about it for a while, but we finally got it going. Ryan Vanoy came in strong on the first week. He's VIP for life. He's got an open mic anytime he wants. My man gets to sit down anytime. Couple of fun, familiar names. Muna Bear jumped in. Dude's been supporting us from day one. Joe from H-Town, the very famous Joe from H-Town who makes it everywhere. Joe Gazzulo. Or something. I'm pretty sure he's pretty Italian like that. Gazzulo.
Is that the usual spelling, John?
That's the usual spelling.
Oh,
Jared Sorensen as well. All those guys stepped up as well. So big shout out to them. I will say I got to throw some shade. You know, I flew over here. I got the direct flight, by the way, for the first time, which is awesome. British Airways. Didn't have to stop anywhere. Did the Vegas to London direct. It was actually the cheapest option. Was flying direct, so that was fantastic. I will say, British Airways, fantastic service, good airline. They do fly some old-ass 747s on a lot of their routes, so there was no power, there was no internet. But I'd loaded up on some MMA podcasts, as I tend to do. And I will say, Chad Dundas, co-main event, he threw some shade. And I got to say, man, you know, friends of the show for sure. Obviously, Ben Folks, a co-host there. We got nothing but love for the co-main event, but you know they just had a fantastic drive. They've had some fantastic success with their Patreon account as well, and they were like, hey, some other podcasts out there starting Patreon. Gee, I wonder what that was all about. But what else will they copy of us? Well, let me just say, Chad Dundas, as a reward for your listeners this past week, you talked about MMA while drinking and having a drinking. I have done that for 155 straight weeks. Chad done this. So who's got the original content now?
Swagger jacking.
All good, nothing but love. Yeah, I was listening to that on the way over there. I was like, oh, I see how it's gonna be around here.
You need to rename your podcast The Main Event. That's what you need to do.
All right, let's talk about UFC Fight Night 127. The main card. I really do like the last two fights on the main card. Now, I get it. Might not be, piquing everybody's interest, but let's start with Tom Duquesnoy and Terrion Ware. Tom Duquesnoy, of course, the French prospect. He's had some setbacks. He was hyped up. It was tough because he was in one of those spots where everybody's like, "This is the guy. This is the guy." But he does look very talented. And Terrion Ware, I love Terrion Ware. He's 0-2 in the UFC, so it's really easy, I think, to overlook him and say, here's a guy that's 0-2. They're setting him up they're just getting Duquesnoy a win here, to keep him moving forward in Europe. No. Ware is tough, man. You look at who's fought. Cody Stamann, Sean O'Malley, man, and he had good fights with both of them. I like this fight a lot. I like Terrion Ware a lot. I mean, another tough assignment for him. It's funny, I was joking with him today. His manager is Jason House, who's a good friend of the show. I was like, tell your boy to get you better fights, man. He's throwing you under the bus, throwing you the wolves. But what do you guys think about that? And are you guys still super high on Duquesnoy is like everybody was coming into the UFC?
I think Duquesnoy is an interesting case study right now because he came in with an enormous amount of hype, didn't he? He was a two-weight world champion for BAMMA. Came in with a huge amount of hype and won his UFC debut in pretty spectacular fashion against Patrick Williams. Then he fought Cody Stamann, and Cody Stamann outworked him. And it was an interesting fight to watch because it looked to me that when Duquesnoy needed to find that extra gear, for whatever reason, he wasn't able to find it. Mm-hmm. And that is what lost him the fight.
Right.
He says he's gone back to the drawing board. He's seen where he's made mistakes, and he's going to come back better this weekend. I think someone like Terrion Ware is also going to push him like Cody Stamann did. And I think it's going to give an opportunity for Tom Duquesnoy to show that he has progressed and that if he does need to find that extra gear, it's there now. And that's going to be the interesting thing to watch for because all the while he's dictating the pace and where the fight goes, he looks fantastic. But how does he react when he's being pressured, when he's being denied space to work, when he's the one coming off the back foot, being forced outside that big, thick black line and towards the fence? That's going to be the interesting thing to watch in this fight because Cody Stamann did that really well, particularly late on in the fight against Duquesnoy in the last matchup. How would Duquesnoy show his improvements this time? I think it's a fascinating clash.
I really do. I like that fight a lot. Sandhu, I want to ask you. I think you're especially hyped up for the Rocky Edwards, Leon Edwards, Peter Sabota fight, and as Simon, who's always looking for a good shtick, a good pun, pointed out with Leon Rocky Edwards being on here with Alexander Drago Volkov. We do have Rocky and Drago on this card.
There needs to be some Rocky IV walkout music on Saturday. If nobody walks out to No Easy Way Out, then I'm not going to be very impressed.
But tell me about the Sandhu. I know you're hyped for this one. Sabata, I mean, listen, I think it's easy to write him off. You look at his career record. You look at his career UFC record, which of course dates back to a losing streak years ago. It doesn't look that impressive, but I feel like his last couple of appearances, like he's turned a corner somewhere. I think this is pretty intriguing. As you said, Rocky Edwards, a guy kind of on the cusp, has a little chip on his shoulder, feels a little disrespected, feels like he needs to get more recognition, better opponents. And Peter, I think, is again a guy that I think has improved leaps and bounds of late.
Yeah, when I spoke to Peter today, we were all there for the Stockholm event last year when he just destroyed Ben Saunders in devastating fashion, right? And in his opinion, he thought that was what's going to catapult him to the next level. But what happened was he got a severe hand injury, which put him out for, I think it was like 3 or 4 months.
Right.
And then I was kind of catching him up because we're connected on social media, so I've seen that he got married, he's got a kid.
You connected on social media or something?
1 or 2 people, John, 1 or 2 people.
He keeps it on the down low.
Yeah, keep it quiet. But he's had a lot going on. It was obviously coming off the high of that big win of Ben Saunders, then the hand injury. He gets married, has a kid. He says, "Look, I'm 31 now. I've got so much more focus on why I'm fighting." And he said that before he got married and before he became a father, he was just fighting because he wanted to be the best. And now he's got a purpose and he's got better direction. And he feels as though his hands healed up pretty well. And this is a main card slot. He tells me that behind the scenes they're perhaps talking about a Germany event this year. That's what what Peter thinks or what Peter's heard, and he'd love to kind of rebound back from this event and go back to a German event as well. But having said all of that, Leon Edwards is a guy that's kind of like really got a momentum coming into this card. Like we talked about it earlier on, he's got a chip on his shoulder, and I feel like he's got a bit of an attitude adjustment as of late. And I think it's just what he needed, just to turn the volume up a little bit on who he is and what he's about, just to get people's attention. We talked about it earlier on, the weigh-ins this morning. His face-off of the weigh-ins, the face-off this morning. His face-off with Sabata was the one.
That was the highlight.
That was the highlight. That was the juiciest one. And I'm kind of definitely leaning towards Leon, only because he's been more active. He's the younger fighter. I think all round he's got the better overall skill set. But it's a tough fight. Peter Sabata is a very, very tough fight for anybody.
Yeah.
And it's Jamaica versus Jamaica, of course. We've got
have to throw that out there. Right?
We've got Leon Rocky Edwards, born in Kingston, Jamaica, versus Peter Sabata, born in Poland, but now we assume he's still flying the flag of Jamaica. 2 events ago in Hamburg, Germany, a fight in Germany, he chose to fly the flag of Jamaica. He walks out to bad boys in a circle, which you should automatically get an extra point on your scorecard for that.
Yeah, he's doing it right.
So
if you're going to represent Jamaica,
you got to do a bit of inner circle, right? So
just
it's
smoking a joint on the way.
so it's Jamaica versus Jamaica.
I like it. Should we go ahead? I mean, I hate to take the spotlight off of Rocky, but should we go ahead and mention his brother too? I mean,
oh yeah,
a lot of people in the UK scene I know are saying he's better. I mean, no disrespect, but saying like, hey, you like Rocky?
Yeah.
Wait till you see Fabian.
Yeah.
Outstanding performance at Bama.
Yep.
Last weekend, got rocked, and everyone was like, whoa, okay. But the minute he got rocked, the fight went to the floor, and in a blink of an eye, he locked up a belly-down armbar, and the fight was over. Now, Fabian Edwards is known as being a very, very dangerous, very, very powerful striker. But in that moment there, it's like, okay, go to the ground with me, I'll finish you there too. There is an awful lot of buzz behind Fabian Edwards, and Leon in his interview with us earlier in the week said we're going to be the first brothers in the UFC, and we're going to be the first brothers to hold championship belts.
Yeah, pretty cool.
So he's definitely one to watch for sure. There's lots of talk about Darren Till, and the Scousers coming up, like Fishgold and Pimlet and McCann. Look out for Mr. Edwards Jr.
Very nice. His preliminary card, and I mean, it's all on UFC Fight Pass, so it's where you want to split up. I did want to talk about John Phillips and Charles Byrd. Now, Charles Byrd, a guy that, I don't think a ton of people will be completely familiar with, but I have seen a lot of him. He fights out of Texas, so obviously I always pay attention to my home state scene. He went on Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series twice in 6 weeks, and on the second try was able to earn himself a contract. So pretty cool stuff there. But he's running into John Phillips, who I wanted you guys to kind of weigh in on, because I think especially American fans might not realize. I mean, here's a guy that's had almost 30 fights in his career already, an interesting character to say the least, and somebody I think UK fans especially have felt like deserves a shot for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. The white Mike Tyson.
The white Mike Tyson.
You know what? It's funny because I was doing the rounds and they kind of split up the media day in 2 parts today, and in the second part, he was on my list to get around to, and just as I was pitching up, it was just wrapping up the interview, and they were calling it a day of wrapping things up, and so it was a bit unfortunate. I never got a chance to speak to him, but having said that, he's got a fascinating backstory. He's obviously been signed to the UFC for well over a year now, I think, and this is his debut for the promotion, which is a long time coming. He's obviously training out of SBG Dublin, Conor McGregor fame. And he's got John Kavanagh in his corner, and he seems as though he's from Wales again. I'm sure we're going to talk about it. Marshman, is now off the card.
Yeah.
I thought this would have been a nice way to kind of build some more momentum for the Welsh, because
they're coming strong
they're
now,
coming
right?
Strong, and again, we talk about Liverpool. Having an event in Wales would be fantastic at some point in the future as well, right? Yep. But yeah, John Phillips is definitely kind of, I think, one of the highlights on that preliminary card.
Absolutely, we spoke to him this afternoon, and I've spoken to him a couple of times over the years when he's come up through the domestic circuit, and he fought. He started out as a Commonwealth Games boxer. So he's boxed to a really good high standard as an amateur boxer for Wales, and he then basically fell out of love with boxing, decided he wanted to be more of a gladiator. He wanted to get his hands on people and really roughhouse a few opponents. And you can't really do that in boxing. It's not really in the Queensberry rules. So he took up MMA and did very well. But he said the turning point of his career was when he was invited to come and train with SBG. And he said that it saved his career. He said he may well have quit had he not had that call. He won the BAMMA middleweight title. He fought for the Cage Warriors middleweight title. He's now in the UFC. He's riding a 4-fight, 4-knockout win streak.
18 of 21 career wins by knockout, all 21 wins by stoppage. He's fought to a decision once in 27 fights.
Yeah, he's a finisher. He's a finisher, and he's a character as well. I mean, the interview is up on MMAjunkie.
Well,
right
I'm going to
now.
play it right now. That's what, because he is a character. So I don't want to just talk about him. I want people to hear. You actually handled the second half, as Sandhu said, it was kind of split.
Yeah.
Simon Head actually handled the second half of the interviews for us while I went and edited the video that Abby Simon shot and tried to edit some of the stuff he didn't shoot as well, but settled for what I got. But while you guys were doing that, you guys had a chance to talk to John Phillips, and he is an interesting character. So let's hear from the White Mike Tyson.
John Phillips, it's been a long time coming, and it's taken a lot of campaigning, but you're finally here. What are the emotions as you get closer to fight night for your very first UFC appearance?
It's an absolute emotional roller coaster, and it's mad. And actually, I remember watching back and watching my fellow old teammate Brett John's fight, and he's crying all the time. I thought, what the fuck's he crying for? He's crying all the time. He's putting that on. But now I'm here, I understand why he was crying all the time, and the amount of times I've nearly burst into tears. It's just an emotional roller coaster, and it's a relief that you've trained so hard, and you've sacrificed so much, and you've put so much in to get to this stage. And when you get here, it's magical. It's magical.
And obviously, the performances that have brought you here have been the major factor. But you've gone above and beyond when it comes to trying to get the UFC's attention. You took a telephone for a day out, and that sort of started a big sort of movement to get you signed. Where does all this stuff come from? And just talk us through some of that stuff you did. And did the UFC react to any of this? Did they ever say, we saw that?
My fighting style, my record speaks for itself. I've got so many knockouts. But I just weren't getting the notice, because if you're not fighting, you can't get noticed. So I was like, I've got to do something to get noticed. And I come up with this video. We're going to do a video. And actually, after I'd done the video, a good friend of mine, that was his best man in his wedding, Kerry Morgan, says, hey, let's get a phone and go around with a phone and pretend we're waiting for the phone call. And I love the idea. So we run with it, and it went good, and UFC obviously noticed it. And actually, I had good and bad vibes. I'd have a lot of people saying, who is this idiot? He can't fight. And they'd go and check me, and then they'd message me back, actually, mate, we've checked you. You can fight. Best of luck. So it was great. But a lot of people knew me then from doing a stupid video and not my fighting, but now they're going to know me for my fighting as well. But yeah.
It's been a long road for you. I mean, from Commonwealth Games boxer to UFC athlete. What was it that first convinced you to swap the boxing gloves for the 4-ounce gloves?
I'll always be a massive diehard fan of boxing, it was my dread, and it was what made me who I am, really. And I still believe that I win a lot of my fights by showcasing my boxing skills. But I just fell out of love with it, I wanted to be that gladiator style. I wanted it more street fighting, gladiator style, and boxing just wasn't doing that for me anymore, I just fell out of it, and I thought, no, I want to grab hold of someone, I want to experience that, and that's what made me come to MMA.
And you seem to have found sort of the spiritual home for you now at SBG. How transformative has that been for your career?
Oh, massively. If I didn't go to SBG and I didn't get invited to go over to SBG, I wouldn't be here today, I would probably have quit, actually, if I didn't go to SBG. So SBG probably saved me. And it's been a long road, a long, hard, bumpy road to get here, but it's still a long way to go yet, so it's going to be good.
And the first step on that road is Saturday night, Charles Bird. What do you make of him as an opponent? How much have you seen of him, and how do you see the fight stacking up?
Charles is a good all-rounder, I don't want to get into slagging my opponents off. I don't actually like that, because my opponent is is the same as me, you know what I mean? He's just trying to make a better life for him and his family, the same as everyone else on the card. So, unless someone really wants to talk dirty about me, I probably won't even talk dirty about him, man. I'm going to get my hands on him. We're going to fight. He's coming to win. I'm coming to win. I can make a prediction. I'm looking for the first round KO. Whether it happens or not, the best man will decide on the night, and fate will decide on the night.
I know there's a lot of UK fans who are very excited for you making your debut. There's also going to be a huge international audience who have never seen you before. For those people who haven't seen you fight before, just give us a bit of a sort of a one-liner. What are they going to see from John Phillips this weekend?
Violence.
All right, so John Phillips, certainly a character there. Guys, just kind of real quickly, you touched on it earlier. Jack Marshman versus Brad Scott, not happening. We kind of happened into that news. Our crack reporting got the story. But we do kind of fill in our laps. But it did fall off the card. Jack Marshman had some issues cutting weight. It's a preventative thing, we should say. Obviously, the UFC is trying to be proactive about this stuff. And I think we heard through the grapevine maybe there was about 7 pounds or so left to cut. So I don't know what the situation. We don't know the full situation yet. We're actually still working on that as we sit down to record this podcast. We're still trying to gather some facts. Sandhu, you actually reached out to Brad Scott. We were hoping we might be able to get to talk to him a little bit. Just kind of a bizarre situation all the way around, because these are two middleweights that were going to fight at welterweight. We find out one of them can't make weight, and our initial question is, well, why didn't you just take a catch weight? And unfortunately, I wish. Again, as we were sitting down right now to record, we had more information. Hopefully, we'll in the morning. But was that Brad Scott's decision to say no? Like, look, I came in here on short notice and I put myself through hell, and I was going to make it, and you weren't. Or was it a UFC decision? We don't know yet.
We also don't know just what kind of a state Jack Marshman was in. Someone tweeted me earlier when we sort of tweeted the news out, and I sort of retweeted it, and he said, well, why not do it at 185? And I said, in my reply was, you can't. Once someone has complications during a weight cut, you don't change the weight class. You don't put the fight on.
Well, that's a good point. So maybe something happened. I mean, again, this is pure speculation.
Yeah.
This is not informed at all, so I'm not saying this happened. But let's say, for instance, a guy passed out, or
you just don't know. We don't know
at that point, you
anything
don't
about
go, well,
it,
you passed out, but we'll just do 180 or whatever. Like, we don't know what happened yet.
Exactly. So, I mean, we met up early this week. We sort of met up in London on Tuesday. Mm-hmm. And one of the first things I said to you about this card was how strange it was that you've got two established middleweights who were going to fight at welterweight.
Bizarre.
And there's obviously reasons for this, in terms of maybe they both decided to move down, or Jack had decided to move down and Brad agreed to make the drop. As it turned out, it was Jack that had the problem. But the most important thing with all of this is that when the fighters step into the octagon to compete, they're doing so fully replenished and safe. If you've had any kind of issue during a weight cut, if you pass out, if you fall over, you could pass out, bang your head, whatever. Even just passing out during a weight cut, that's tricky, and you shouldn't really be slinging them back in the octagon at that point. So at that point, that's kind of like the knockout punch there. It's a difficult one. This is a sport where people are losing weight by dehydration still. Until that system gets changed, if it ever does, these things are going to happen. They're happening less frequently than perhaps they did a couple of years ago, but when you see people moving down in weight, there's always that danger. So it's a tricky one. The most important thing is that Jack Marshman is okay. My understanding is that he is.
Yeah.
And he's probably just pissed off that he's not fighting at this point.
Fighter safety.
You've done the whole training camp. You're 24 hours away pretty much, and now your fight's off.
Another, I think, really important topic as well, and again, fighter safety is first and foremost, and weight cutting remains an issue that we've got to fix. But I think the other very, very important part about this is that we need to know that if you were still working at the Sun, if you would have been tempted to use the headline, "Jack's off."
I would never stoop so low.
We know what a fan of puns you are.
Had it not been a health thing, I'd maybe be tempted, but I've moved on. You're bringing up my past now, John. I've moved on. I've moved on and moved up from there.
Too good. All right, Oliver Enkamp is facing Danny Roberts. Of course, Danny Roberts came in with a lot of hype, I think, around him, and has struggled a little bit in his time with the UFC. He's fought some tough guys, though, no doubt about it. Meanwhile, Oliver Enkamp lost his debut as well. They both have fought Nordine Talib, but I got to say, I like Oliver Enkamp. What I saw, I wasn't super familiar with him, but I like what I saw of him. I like his creativity. He looks like a fun fighter for sure. You guys have any thoughts on this? This is Sweden versus England.
Yeah, it's funny because when I was in Toronto for 2 or 3 months, one of the shows that I ended up going to cover was the Fox card in Winnipeg, which is where Danny last fought, and obviously it didn't go his way that night. And I think for Danny, he's been very inconsistent.
Right.
That's all it's come down to with him. And he's got a home game now, so to speak.
Yep.
Being able to fight here.
Got a
in London.
fantastic nickname and hot chocolate.
Yeah. Did you see his outfit today?
No.
Just
my
flowery is all you can say. It's very flowery.
Oh, he was in the second half when I was editing videos, so I didn't get to
It's
see
a
him.
tracksuit. It's
Yeah.
a tracksuit, but it's a full-on flowery tracksuit. I
Yeah.
did double check with him, and it definitely did not fit the Reebok outfit. He
But-
just laughed in my face when I asked him, "Is that Reebok?" He said, "Pah."
You know what? He was in good spirits. And but he's got a tough fight on his hands.
I
man.
think this could be an entertaining fight.
Yeah.
Hakeem Dawodu is facing Danny Henry. Hakeem Dawodu, big shout out to our good friend Danny Austin, who has been singing the praises of Hakeem Dawodu for a long time. Of course, they're both they live in the Calgary area, so he's seen the guy in the gym training. But I will say this: I was always right there with Danny Austin. I followed Hakeem's career coming up through World Series of Fighting, and the dude is a next level striker. He's an accomplished Muay Thai fighter before he came to MMA. Intense as hell. I actually put him on our list of interviews this week because I wanted to talk to him ahead of his UFC debut, even though I knew it wasn't going to do a ton of clicks or whatever. But I just wanted to meet the guy and kind of get a feel for him. And holy shit, is he intense, man! I couldn't get the guy would smile for like a second and then just like snap back into like death mode.
As Michael Chiavello would say, he could beat us. He could beat the sun in a stare-off.
There you go, man. It was intense, but I'm very high on Hakeem Dawodu. I like the guy, but Dan, he's not getting an easy fight here either. So, you guys, are you guys feeling me on this Dawodu train, or am I crazy?
I've not seen too much of him, but what I have seen, it's just been clips. I am looking forward to seeing this guy fight. I really am. Danny Henry is a bit more of a grappler, so there's going to be that clash of styles. Henry is going to be looking for a single or a double, and Dawodu with his strikes with hands and feet and the knees up the middle could be quite profitable for him on fight night. I think, and as you say, we spoke to him, very intense. He is absolutely adamant. He's been waiting for this call for a long time. Mm-hmm. Now he's got it. He's going to make a statement. He's absolutely nailed on that this is going to be a night for him where it's packed with British fighters, this card. He wants everybody to walk away talking about a Canadian.
I'm excited for it. Paul Craig, a Scotsman who wants to pick up a win here for sure. Magomed Ankalaev. I'll just say.
Nailed it.
Yeah, got it. Okay. No, Paul Craig, a good dude. Difficult to understand. My favorite Paul Craig story was meeting him in the airport. And the reason I went and spoke to him is because our writers back home were working on a Scrum story from him and couldn't understand what he was saying. And I was like, well, he happens to be sitting in the airport bar here. Let me just go ask him. And it still took me a little while to figure out what he was saying, even as he was explaining what he was saying to us. But he's a good dude, and now he's fighting a undefeated newcomer here. So a big moment for Paul Craig.
Yeah, and he's a crazy man.
He is a crazy man.
He's a crazy man. And there's a piece on the BBC Three site. I write for BBC Three these days, as well as doing some bits and pieces for Junkie. And the videographer for BBC Three, Jag, went and did a piece where Craig just went through this succession of
pretty intense.
I don't know how many cans of Red Bull he had before he started.
A lot.
He did a whole load of MMA impressions of varying quality, I think we should say.
Some were good, some not so good.
We're not talking cold coffee level here.
Oh, no.
We're not talking cold coffee level here, but he's a crazy man. His best one is Arnold Schwarzenegger, though.
Arnold Schwarzenegger was good.
He doesn't mean Arnie. Get to the chopper. I can't.
That was terrible. All right, just kind of round out the card. Anything stand out to you? Kajan Johnson versus Stevie Ray, and I'll say this. I'm going to play the interview I had with Kajan Johnson because I want people to hear this. But Kajan Johnson, of course, I think is as interesting for in the cage as he is outside of the cage right now. He's a big part of this Project Spearhead movement, fighting at Stevie Ray, who Stevie Ray, we know the story by now, was basically, it's hard. You're not released, you're not cut by the UFC, but basically they just don't re-sign you. Your contract runs out, and you're a free agent. They don't need you, so so he was kind of in peril for a little while. Now he's back. I thought I had a fun interview with him today too. Mark Godbeer, who of course his last time out had that bizarre incident with Walt Harris. Now he's fighting again against Dmitry Sosnovsky, who we were talking earlier. The UFC has him listed as being from the USSR on UFC.com. And now we're all kind of curious. Did somebody just mess up at the UFC? Or, as I have posed, is it maybe something that he told him? Because he technically was born 2 years before the dissolution of the USSR.
Maybe he never went back. So technically he is from the USSR.
And he left before, and then it went away.
And hasn't come back since.
There you go. See? Who
Makes
knows?
perfect sense.
Yeah, totally makes sense. And then, of course, Nad Narimani, who stepped in to face Nasrat Haqparast on incredibly short notice. Any of those three fights, we touched a little bit on the narrative of all of them, but anything stand out to you that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, just to kind of put a bit of spotlight on Nad Narimani. He's a guy that we've seen come up through the local circuit here, and what I like about this, is he's replacing Alex Reyes on short notice, and it's an opportunity to fight in the UFC. But it's another showcase of what an amazing conveyor belt that has been built here in the UK and Ireland because of the likes of Bama and Cage Warriors, just to continue to produce this talent for the UFC and for Bellator, and we're lucky in this market that we've got that on lock, right? And some of these guys have gone on to become UFC champions. This card on Saturday night is littered with ex-Bama and ex-Cage Warrior fighters. So I think he's going to be yet another example of someone that's kind of, I suppose, been cultivated by the local circuit here. How he'll do on short notice remains to be seen. Real short notice. But I tip my hat for him to actually take the opportunity when it presented to himself.
Absolutely, and he's fighting at lightweight. He's a Cage Warriors featherweight champion. He beat Paddy Pimblett, who had all the hype running into it. And Nad Narimani from Bristol, who is a seasoned operator. He's been around the scene for a long time. Everyone knows he's a tough out, whoever he fights. He stepped up and he dominated Paddy Pimblett in Pimblett's backyard at the Echo Arena in Liverpool. Superb performance to win the title. And just to add a bit more weight to what Sandhu was saying about the conveyor belt of talent that's being generated by the promotions in the UK, had Marshman still been on this card, we would have had 3 former Cage Warriors world champions on the card and 4 former Bama world champions on this card. So that's just a testament to what's going on the domestic scene and the fact that they are producing talent. In fact, it's 5 because Jimi Manuwa also held a Bama world title as well. So you've got this conveyor belt of talent coming through. There are more coming, and if UFC Liverpool happens, hopefully we'll get to see them. Narimani, I'm excited to see how he steps in. Stevie Ray, I'm excited to see how he deals with Kajan Johnson. Kajan Johnson will make him fight for every minute of every round, and Godbeer's a man with a point to prove. His interview with you was, in hindsight, slightly comical because we sat him down and I almost feel like he should have been lying on a couch.
That was great,
It was almost like a therapy session for the guy because I think he called it cursed.
Right.
The matchup with Walt Harris.
The one that fell apart.
It fell apart. They finally had it. He got kicked in the nuts and then knocked out with an illegal shot. I asked him about it. You asked him about it basically just to mark it off to say that you covered it off in the interview. And he said, it's not something I really want to talk about. And then I think the next question you asked was about 10 minutes later. so clearly he did want to talk about it. And he got it off his chest. Good for him. Hopefully now he can move on. He's got a tough fight. He's got a replacement opponent in Dmitry Sosnovsky.
You don't see many guys from the Soviet Union these days.
Well, there you go. Very rare. I don't know where he's going to find footage of him. But I believe he's undefeated.
Yep.
And this is a big test for Mark Godbeer because I don't know how much tape there's going to be of this guy. And Godbeer is going in there against, again, someone who he hasn't had that much time to prepare for.
These cards, I think if you're listening to the MMA Roadshow, you're probably a hardcore MMA fan, right? And to me, I like these cards. I'll be honest with you. Of course, man, I can't wait to get to Brooklyn. My God, that card is sick. But I love coming here for these smaller cards sometimes. We've had great access to the fighters all week. We've had opportunities to meet people. And this is when you get to not only build those relationships and meet people, but the eye toward the future, seeing what teams are coming up, what fighters are coming up, what markets are coming up. And I get it. Maybe this is not the type of card that, you would book your Saturday night off for or whatever, but it is on Fight Pass, which means it moves fast, which means you can watch it whenever the hell you want for very ease. And I love watching this stuff, to be honest with you. I really do. I love watching the next generation.
Just a quick mea culpa. Manuwa didn't actually win the BAMMA title. He had one fight in BAMMA, and I think he was going to then fight for the title. So
you'd never had to correct yourself, and I would have just gone on for the rest of my life. I'm glad you told me that. I don't want to talk to him about that BAMMA title next time.
I think it's important for the integrity of the podcast that I correct myself.
The integrity of the podcast. That's fantastic. All right, listen. All right, so I do want to play this interview with Kajan Johnson. We didn't really talk about his fight. We did a little bit, but I actually didn't set this up through the UFC. I normally set up everything through the UFC just because I want to play by their rules and everything. But obviously knowing the kind of the sensitive nature of him talking about everything that he is talking about, I just reached out to him directly on social media, Sandhu MMA. How about that? I reached out on social media.
I'm sure you'll connect with one or two fighters.
He'll never catch on.
So I reached out to him and I was like, listen, I know it's fight week and I know you got to have your head in the right spot, but there's so much going on with Project Spearhead. Would you be willing to give me some of your time to talk about this? And I know it's fight week and I apologize. And he said, absolutely, John. No worries at all. Like, please, come on, let's do it. And he came. We sat down. We talked about it. And I got to say, I was just impressed with how intelligently he discusses it. I think what a case he makes for what needs to happen and what needs to change without being. Sometimes people make arguments too emotionally and too over the top, and it kind of, I think, loses some of its impact and power. And he just lays everything out so matter-of-factly and so directly that I think it's worth checking out. So here's Kajan Johnson.
Fight week.
Yeah.
But it's kind of an interesting fight week, right? I mean, you got so much going on, not just in the cage, but out of the cage as well. So let me just ask you what the environment's like for you this week. I mean, you're fighting this legal battle, this labor battle, working on this stuff. So what are people treating you like? Are you an outsider here? Or is
no,
it
not
okay?
at all. Like, really, the people that I always have face-to-faces within the UFC have always been amazing. Throughout the entire process, they've been amazing. It's the people that are the higher-ups that would probably have a negative opinion of me if anybody does. And if they do, I don't really know it because I don't get any FaceTime with these people. So I don't know what they think.
You've been one of the most outspoken people with this movement right now. Obviously an important movement for fighters, but why you? I wonder why you? Why was this such an important cause, something that you had to, put your hand in the air and say, let's do this?
I just think all the causes in the world really are important, right? I believe that I've been a big portion of my life has been fighting against social injustice, whether it's the racial inequality and systemic racism that the First Nations people face within Canada, whether it's the discrimination and the racism that the other minorities are facing within America, or really any other cause that's out there, environmentalism, fighting against large resource extraction within Canada, oil and gas and BC Hydro, all these giant corporations that are stripping the land, stripping the people that are on the land of their land. All of these things have been very important to me for a long, long time. I grew up in kind of a revolutionary type family. My dad was a Black Panther. My mom, after they broke up, my mom ended up marrying a First Nations chief who was very, very outspoken, and he's wild, so I grew up on the reservation, right, and I experienced a whole lot of systemic racism there and social injustice, so it's just something that's been a part of me. And when I see something that there's an issue, and especially an issue where nobody's really willing to say anything about it, everybody seems to be really scared to say something about it, I don't really fear the UFC. I've created a situation where they can't own me anymore. My wealth and my sustainability is no longer tied to them directly. I have my own gym. I have a number of other hustles that are going. So I make my own money. if I'm able to make money through the UFC as well, that's amazing. That's a blessing. But I'm not reliant on that. If I'm only reliant on my income within the UFC in order to sustain life, now they own me. Right? Now I have to abide by whatever they say. I can't stick my head up. I can't do anything. So I've created a situation where this is possible.
Very nice. Project Spearhead is one that you're getting behind right now at this moment.
Yeah.
We've seen a couple different startups that kind of petered out or whatever. Give me an idea why this one. It seems like you're kind of throwing all in on or believe in it.
Yes.
Why are you feeling good about this one?
I believe in this one. I've believed in the MMAFA as well. And their approach, but I believe that Project Spearhead is a more all-inclusive organization. We accept people that have different viewpoints. If you believe that we need a union specifically, you're welcome. If you believe that we do not need a union, that we should be an association and only fight through antitrust lawsuits and utilize the existence of the Ali Act after it gets adopted by Congress, then you're welcome. Everyone is welcome. If you are an elite fighter in any of the major organizations, you're welcome. And I think that is one place that the power lies. And the second place is this is a grassroots organization. We are not being led by some giant mucky muck who's a lawyer, or someone who's a promoter or a former promoter. There's no one on the outside that's going to control us. This is a for fighters by fighters organization, a grassroots organization. So I think that really is the key, and that's what gives us the power. Yeah. What is the right approach, you think? I mean, you think the thing that you're saying is it's all inclusive, that everybody can do it, and so, depending on the viewpoint. But at some point, everybody's got to get one, right? Yeah, we're going to have to make a decision.
Are you comfortable saying kind of where you stand on that right now?
Yes, for sure. In my opinion, I think that we should have a multi-employer CBA. So we will have different CBAs. We either have a multi-employer CBA or have different CBAs with multiple organizations. Okay, so we could have a CBA with Bellator, we could have a CBA with the UFC, we could have a CBA with Invicta, we could have a CBA with ONE FC, any of these organizations, right? And that will still allow us to be a union. Okay, so this is a model that is like ACTRA. My best friend and business partner is a stunt woman and actress, so I've gotten an inside look into how she is dealt with and how her union fights for her. And it's one of the most powerful unions, really. ACTRA, SAG, I believe those models fit us very, very well. And the main reason I believe that we should have those a structure like that is because these people are also able to remain independent contractors while in that union. Okay, she is an independent contractor. She's paid through Ninja Girl Productions. They don't pay her name specifically. She's not an employer. So that would still give us access to the Ali Act. Okay, because we're independent contractors, we are still covered by the Ali Act, but we still have CBAs with all these companies, right? So in my opinion, this is the best of both worlds, right? I still believe that the Ali Act is the single most important feature moving forward for us as fighters, because we need things like transparency. We need things like an independent sanctioning body. These things are going to change the way the whole sport works, right? And it's going to make it much more fair, much more merit-based. Whereas right now it's kind of arbitrary. Like, you'll have guys that'll get title shots, they're not in the top 10. You'll have guys get cut and they came off wins. Right, like there seems to be no consistency across the board. So I think everybody should be able to compete fairly, right, and treated equally. So for that to happen, the Ali Act needs to happen. Now, the Ali Act doesn't cover everything, though, right? Like, for instance, this big TV deal that's about to go through. The Ali Act will do nothing, has nothing to do with this giant billion-dollar TV deal that's about to go through, right? But we need a piece of that. Right? If we don't get a piece of that, that's a huge tragedy. Because that alone will raise all of our income so incredibly, right? And it will actually allow us to create some sort of sustainability in this incredibly volatile career. So I think the two, side by side, is the answer.
I like it. I mean, it seems reasonable. I like the multiple CBAs make sense because, right, uniformity across every organization probably isn't going to work.
No,
so
it's not.
It's interesting to know that you could apply it that way.
Yeah.
The next step right now, what you're trying to do is get people to fill out the forms, right?
Yes.
Are there any drawbacks? I mean, is there any reason if a fighter is sitting on the fence and thinking, well, I like what you're saying, Kajan, this all sounds good to me, but I'm a little afraid too. I mean, are there a reason that a fighter should sit back and say, I don't know?
There isn't a logical reason because all the forms are confidential. I don't even know who signed. I don't know who signed, okay? Our lawyer is the only one that knows who signed right now. And that may change. We may have to allow the treasurer to also have access to that information. But as it is right now, me and Leslie, we don't know who signed. We're just gonna keep working, keep approaching people. So there is a definite fear. That is the only reason that anybody has been able to give me as to why they didn't want to sign, is just that they're afraid of the repercussions from the UFC, which in itself just goes to show how much the power the UFC holds over us, and how vindictive they have seemed anyway. If whether they are or not, that's somebody else's point to say. But the way they've seemed, the way that us as athletes believe they could act against us, right? So that's the only real resistance that I've seen, is that people are just scared they're either going to lose their jobs or be treated unfairly because of it.
Yeah. You said it. You said you're not afraid, but I mean, not at all. But professionally, you're concerned of any repercussions, or maybe who they put you up against in matchups, where they put you on cards, what they do. I mean, does it concern you at all?
I've accepted it. I know that, like, since I have been speaking out, I've noticed that I'm not really as high on cards anymore. The last one, I was the first fight on the card. And there may be other factors here, but I'm just looking at it from my perspective. So last one was I was the first one on the card. This fight, I'm the third one on the card. Before that, I was always close to the top of the prelims. Or my very first fight, I was actually the first fight on the main card, right? So maybe I am being treated differently, but really, I don't care, man. I don't care. That fear isn't worth it to me. I have to be able to be myself. For me to be able to go and perform properly, for me to go and be able to be honest in a cage in front of millions of people, I have to be able to be honest in my day-to-day life. And this is part of my day-to-day life now. So before I used to hold back. I would only show pieces of myself. Now I'm willing to show my whole self. Right? And if that ruffles some feathers, that ruffles some feathers, right? If it forces me to get harder fights, bring them on. Bring them on. Last guy was real hard, you know? And everybody said I wasn't going to win. And then look what happens, you know? So it is what it is, man. If you give me harder fights, I'm going to rise up the ranks faster, right? Because they're higher ranked. So sure, give me harder fights. Give me the hardest fight. Give me the champion. You know, go right ahead.
I like it. We'll talk about. I mean, as far as fighting goes, because this stuff is a huge part of your life, but fighting is still a big part as well. So how do you find it affects you? I mean, is your focus on this impacting your training, your mental focus, anything like that, or are you able to kind of compartmentalize it all?
Yeah, I do what I can. You know, I do what I can. I know that balance is key, and I'm not always going to be able to go and just message these guys constantly, and like Leslie right now is going crazy, like messaging like hundreds of people a day, you know, which is amazing. I'm so grateful for her. But I'm not able to do that at this stage. Right? Now, after this fight, I'm going to have some more time, so I'm going to be able to be reaching out a lot more. And that's kind of how it's going to have to go for me, is I'll be able to do it in phases. And that's going to have to be okay. And if it's not okay, then I'm willing to take a step back. If somebody else is able to do more and wants my spot, by all means, you know. But right now, there's not a whole bunch of people out there that are vying for this spot. So I'm just doing what I can, and that so far has been working.
I know you can't say because you don't even know who signed up. Are you aware of numbers-wise? I mean, you get an update like that, like how much interest you're getting?
I don't have a solid number. I know that we got 4 yesterday. So we've been getting more and more all the time. We are on schedule. I know that we are on schedule and possibly a little bit ahead of schedule because we only have a year to get a third of the roster, right? So within that, so we're shooting for, I think we should have everybody on at this pace. We should meet that goal by September. Right, and we're on pace for that. So really, we're doing well. We're doing well. I don't know the exact number, but I know that we're on pace and things are going properly.
Nice. And assuming that gets done, give me an idea of kind of the schedule and what to expect next. I mean, can this be done like in a positive way? Because I think that's what's interesting is, I think something definitely needs to be done, right?
Yeah.
But does it have to be, dig in and butt heads and battle and walkouts and strikes and whatever else? Or do you think this is something that can be done in a positive way?
I think it can be done in a positive way. I think that we want it to be done in a positive way. Nobody wants to lose the work. We all want to work. We all want to fight. We're fighters. We want to fight. We're not getting paid enough that a strike would be easy for us, right? But it's just really going to come to whether or not there's going to be blowback from the UFC. I would like it if they would just voluntarily recognize us, right? But if not, then we'll have to go through other options.
What if your fighting career comes to an end, whether it be UFC reasons, whether it be injury reasons, whatever it be? Would this be a cause that you'd still champion even if your fighting days were over?
Definitely. This isn't about me. This isn't about me getting more money. This isn't about me getting what I need or what I believe are my rights as a fighter. It says nothing, because I know that by the time this actually comes to pass and is working and has changed the game, I'll either be done or I'll be close to done. This is about my students. This is about the next generation. And the way I was brought up, because I was raised on a reservation, right? So I was brought up with a lot of First Nations cultures and traditions. And one of the mainstays in that culture is you need to make the world and make the entire earth and every system a better place for the next 7 generations. You need to protect the next 7 generations. So this is part of what I'm doing. This is one of the reasons I'm doing this, is for the next 7 generations of martial artists. So they're not being oppressed like we were.
Very cool. Fans, if they believe in this cause, if they support, is there anything fans can do? Is there any assistance they can offer? Or is this something that just the fighters have to handle?
If anybody has any legal or business acumen and they're able to help out our team, we are definitely we are accepting a couple applicants on a volunteer basis. And the best person to reach out to for that would be Lucas Middlebrook or any of the Project Spearhead pages. But other than that, right now we don't have anything set up. We don't have like GoFundMe set up or anything. There are some talks to like selling T-shirts and things like that in order to start generating some income so that we have something if we need to fly here, fly there, get whatever done. But that'll all be coming in the future. So just stay tuned. There will be ways for the fans to help for sure.
Very cool. Well, I appreciate all the big picture talk. You've got a fight coming up on Saturday night, so you got to think about that. How are you seeing this thing play out? Are you excited for it?
Yeah, I'm super excited, man. This is like a very freeing fight, this one. The last fight, I wasn't able to be my complete self because I was dealing with such a specialist. Really, like on paper, he looked like he was good everywhere, which he was, but that wasn't the way he practiced his martial arts. It was very like one-dimensional. I'm gonna knock you out with a counter with either my left hand or my right hook. That was like really the only chip he would ever play. So I had to design a whole game staying away from that one area that he liked to use, right? Whereas this fight, Stevie will wrestle you, he'll go to the ground, he'll attack leg locks, he'll kick you, he'll punch you, like where it's kind of all over the place. So there's no real one area that I have to avoid. I just can allow myself to be a lot more freed and a lot more flowing and just work in between the different disciplines and just be better at every discipline. It's a lot more fun for me for sure.
All right, guys, Kajan Johnson, a lot to unpack there, but I know it's getting late in the evening on Thursday night, so I don't want to spend too much time on it. But, I will say this. I'm not one of those people who pretends to know what all the answers are and pretends to know what the right move is here. I mean, because there's still so many ways, but I do think, I love what Kajan said about having multiple CBAs, collective bargaining agreements, among fighters with organizations. I mean, UFC, and Bellator and ONE, they can't all pay the same. They can't all, and I think that's one thing that's always possible. If you try to get like the regional promoters of the world to live by the same standards as the UFC or Bellator, it's not going to happen. It's going to be detrimental to the sport. But I love the concept of maybe being able to say, okay, listen, Mr. Regional Promoter, we know that you can't do things this way, but here's what we agree that we need to be compensated at, what needs to be provided, that sort of thing, and doing things kind of individually, and again, not taking care of just UFC fighters, because don't get me wrong, the UFC has 90% of the best fighters on the planet, there's no question about it, but there are other organizations, there's other people that have needs too, and I love the fact that this is potentially more all-encompassing. So I just want to say again, especially with it being a fight week and him having so much going on, kudos to Kajan for giving us the time, and I just thought presenting a great case.
I thought so, and I think I said to you as soon as Kajan left the room, what an impressive individual. This is a guy who, he isn't someone who's highly ranked in the UFC, but he feels like he can contribute, and his voice is just as relevant as Conor McGregor's voice when it comes to collective bargaining, because the idea of collective bargaining, everybody's in the same pot together, one vote, one person, everyone's in there. And it's interesting because we've seen different organisations crop up, some have come and gone, all the rest of it. We both went to a press conference in Vegas for the PFA, I think it was.
Right.
And, I'll let you say what you think if you want to, but I mean, from my point of view, I was 2.5 minutes into that press conference and I knew that thing was doomed.
Yeah.
Because the attitude was one of resistance, it was one of abrasion, and it was just completely the wrong way to go about anything. If you want to reach accord with someone, you need to talk. You need to find common ground, you need to have an appreciation for the other side. And once you start to do that, and as long as you do it from a reasonable point of view, that starts to open doors. It might take a little bit of time, but going in saying we want X, Y, Z, or we're going to do X, Y, Z, that's not the way to do it. You might end up at that point if you've exhausted all your options, but you got to do things the right way. And I thought the way Kajan spoke there was so impressive, and you just hope that this isn't a full storm. We've seen a couple of others in the past. If this is going to happen eventually, let's hope that it's done properly. And from what Kajan says, it's coming from the right place, and he seems to have his head screwed on. So all power to him.
Simon, speaking of doing the right thing, let me talk to you about Health IQ real quick. MMA Roadshow is sponsored by Health IQ, an insurance company that helps health-conscious people like runners, cyclists, weightlifters, and vegetarians get lower rates on their life insurance. Go to healthiq.com/road to support the show and to get your free quote. I'm an old man now, guys. I said it. I'm 40 years old. I've had life insurance for a long time. I'm not going to lie. It's important. I think you got to have it, especially when you got a wife and kids. You got to have that stuff, man. But if you don't have life insurance, or maybe you're just trying to get a better rate, you got to get a hold of the people at Health IQ. As Cold Coffee would tell you if he was here right now, it's all about better science. Health IQ spent years gathering the science and data to prove that health conscious deserve lower rates. Over 1 million people took their Health IQ quiz and formed the basis for the scientific analysis of the relationship between health and health knowledge. They took all the years of data and science on the health conscious to the top carriers and partnered with them to get the lowest rates on life insurance for the health conscious, which I promise I am going to be more health conscious now that I am 40, because I want to be 50 at some point. Health IQ can hook you up with lower rates by just taking a few lifestyle quizzes and submitting actual data like race results, Runkeeper data, which is apparently a thing. You reach out and they take you on a journey learning about your lifestyle and your choices. It's like getting good driver rates. If you're health conscious, they'll help with the underwriting so everyone understands the specific stats and information that pertain to you. To see if you qualify, get your free quote today at healthiq.com/road. or mention the promo code ROAD when you talk to a Health IQ agent. Okay, a couple other things on the list before you guys get out of here. Did you guys see Dana White's son, boxing, picked up an amateur victory?
I didn't see the fight itself. I don't know if
Right,
it's available online.
no, but I thought that was wild. So I just want to ask what you guys thought, because I thought it was crazy, number one. So he's been training for a while. I had actually seen him training a couple times at the Performance Institute. I never reported it, and I was kind of torn on it, right? Because I knew it was news, right? I mean, Dana White's kid is fighting, but it's also like, that's your kid. You know, I don't know. It just felt weird to me. So I never talked about it. So it was kind of cool to see him put it up on Instagram. But his kid's been training. I mean, obviously he has access to high-level trainers. So it's not like he's just kind of getting in there ill-prepared. My understanding is his kid's actually a pretty sick athlete. I think he's a quarterback on his football team and all that stuff. But got in there and picked up an amateur debut. But in boxing, not mixed martial arts. I thought that was intriguing. You know, if maybe there's a future Zuffa boxing prospect there. But I did talk to Dana briefly about it because, you know, I have a son that's training martial arts. And I love it. It's my favorite time of week is going to Extreme Couture and watching him grapple and watching him strike and all this. I love it, man. I see the confidence that he's building, the skills that he's learning. I love it, man. It makes me so proud to see. But there's no part of me that wants to ever see him fight whatsoever. You know, people are like, do you want to see it? Hell no, I don't want to see my kid get punched in the face. But it was funny because Dana actually admitted, because I asked him, I was like, listen, man, that had to be more nerves than you've had in a long time. He was like, dude, I was sick when I was walking out. He was like, I was physically sick. So I thought that was pretty wild. Dana White's son, boxing. I don't know that he's necessarily planning a career. I think he just wanted to take a shot at it, but pretty interesting.
You know what's crazy? It's 2018, and for the life of me, I couldn't find any clips of Aiden White's performance anywhere online. Like, I'm thinking to myself, there's got to be phones in the arena, maybe something on Instagram, on Twitter, but nothing at all.
I'm pretty sure they had that under lockdown, I bet.
How old
because
is he?
it's I think he's 17.
Okay, so he's old enough that the child protection issues are largely cleared.
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean in the UK, for example. No, I mean I don't mean from a people punching each other in the face
Right.
point of view. I mean from a sharing content on social media point
Oh, that's
of view.
interesting. No, I bet they had online. It was at Peter Welch's boxing gym is where it was. But I was told that like Lorenzo flew out there, and you know, I mean, like they had a bunch of people there. So I bet they asked not to.
They may have had to sign disclaimers where
They may have had to sign like
people come
NDAs
in,
or something.
You're not allowed to use social media.
Because can't be by accident. You're absolutely right, Sandhu. In 2018, it can't be by accident.
No way.
Or are you saying that it didn't happen?
Or are we saying it's perhaps something that needs to be discussed on Conspiracy Corner?
Conspiracy Corner. Big shout out to Fiasco Jones. If you can't get enough Fiasco Jones on the MMA Roadshow, and I don't think that's very many of you by the feedback I get sometimes, but if you can't,
Jamuga!
he has now got his own podcast, which is awesome. I listened to it, and it is peak Fiasco Jones. My God, the things that he was talking about. I was lost. I will admit, I'm a simple man, and I was lost.
It's also surprisingly quiet.
He must have invested in some high quality audio gear to suppress.
He dials it up when he comes on the MMA Roadshow.
What's up with that? He keeps it quiet on his own show and tries to ruin ours. Couple quick things. Speaking of Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series. There was a story that came out in Kambachi, actually. We'd kind of heard this. They were planning a Brazilian version of it. All Brazil. Was actually told a while back that they were planning on starting it next week. That it was originally going to film right after this, but they've pushed that back. Sounds like they were having some trouble figuring out the logistics. So still probably going to happen, but probably in Las Vegas. They think it's cheaper and easier there to do everything. I mean, they've got all the facilities right there. So does seem like Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series is going to come back. I mean, everybody's high on it. I love it, man. I love, just a handful of fights, quick 2-hour window. Again, I like watching prospects. I love seeing the next generation. But it sounds like they're still going to do an all-Brazilian version at some point. I did want to say, too, Mairbek Taisimov, him being ruled out of UFC 223. Yeah. So sick of that, man. You guys have had the opportunity to see him fight over here a lot, of course, because he can't come to the U.S. He's had these visa issues. I was told that most of the visa issues were just basically boils down to the fact of his ethnicity and where he's from, his country of origin. Not necessarily that he's got a huge, history of, killed somebody or something like that. So, damn shame. But it's tough, man, because if you're the UFC, here's this dude that is really good, and you can't fight him in the United States, which is one of your key markets, especially when it comes to building stars and getting guys exposure. I was gutted, man, because I am high on Taisimov, man. I think he is really good.
He's a top 10
guy. You know what
guy.
I'm saying, Sandhu? High on Taisimov. You know what I mean?
Very high.
High as a kite, some might say. He's a top 10 guy, maybe even, given the right opposition, eventually a top 5 guy at 155 pounds. He's that good. But No one in their right mind who is ranked in the top 10 is going to take a fight flying halfway across the world to fight him in Hamburg, Germany,
Right.
Rotterdam, the Netherlands,
That's right.
London, England, because there is zero upside.
I agree.
He isn't ranked because he's not been able to fight the ranked guys. But if you're looking just ability-wise, he deserves to be at least top 15. Give him the fights. He's in the top 10. Give him more fights. He might even break the top 5.
I was told there's a remote possibility that this might eventually lead to his release because their hands are just tied and they respect the hell out of the guy and they think he's talented, but they can't use him and they don't know what to do with him.
That would be such a shame. I think he would be a superstar for someone like ACB or Fight Nights Global. But
And hell, I mean, he might be the one asking for his release. If he's like, if I can't fight in the U.S., I could be Fight Nights Global, I could be ACB, and I could make big checks doing it. You know,
well, he's
so
not
maybe.
earning now, is he? That's the problem.
Yeah.
You know.
All right, listen. Before we go, I should say this week also, with all the milestones that were there, it also marked the introduction to the world of the Leprechaun Teabag.
Oh my goodness.
So,
Sit back, everybody.
listen, we're here at the Airbnb, and you make do, okay? And you know, we've talked about it. The bean counters are kind of, you know, they're kind of watching the budget a little more, right? So we haven't, you know, we've been doing our Nando's, which is very reasonably priced. I love Nando's, but other than that, you know, we haven't really been going out hitting the pubs, running up the tabs, you know, because we've got to watch what we're spending. So we've been trying to stick around the Airbnb, have some cocktails, that sort of thing. So the other night, Abby, he messes up with videography sometimes, but he's fantastic in the kitchen. He's been cooking breakfast. He's been awesome. And he was making some green tea. And I was like, man, green tea. That sounds pretty damn good. Can I have a green tea? And he's like, yes, you can. Brought me a cup of green tea. I was like, that is a fantastic green tea. I was like, you know what would make the second cup of green tea even better is some of that whiskey that's sitting over there in that bottle. And so Abby said, I got you, John. Green tea with whiskey. I'm like, let's see what this tastes like. And you know what? It was pretty damn good. So I said, you know what? Let's have a third one of those with some green tea and some whiskey. He said, no problem. He's like, I brought plenty of tea. I'm English. I got tea. I said, thank you, sir. So he makes another green tea with whiskey. I said, you know what? We got to come up with a name for this. Now, I maybe had a couple cocktails before. Maybe it had 2 bottles of wine before the whiskey. But obviously, you're trying to come up with a name for something. What's green? So you go with the leprechaun, and there's a tea bag sitting in the drink. So Leprechaun Teabag it is. But it didn't stop there. We may have been partaking of things that were leading to creative minds at that point. And
Speak
I said,
for
you know what?
yourself.
You know what would really make this Leprechaun... Yeah, don't drug test me. You know what would make this Leprechaun Teabag a true Leprechaun Teabag is if when you have your coffee cup full of your tea, what you do is... Now, you can kind of picture this as I describe it. You take your coffee cup and you turn the coffee cup to where the handle is at 12 o'clock. It's facing directly away from you. And you hold the tea bag right there on the inside of the cup so that on the inside of the cup, the tea bag is secure at the 12 o'clock position where the handle is. Then you lift up as you finish your drink, as you get that last sip. You lift it up and you drink it like that so that at the very end, the tea bag that's still in there just touches you ever so slightly right on the nose. Leprechaun tea bag. Thanks for listening, everybody.